Hey folks! Okay, so here's how this is going to work. I'm going to give you a quick explanation for what this video is, so you can go start exploring down on the timeline. After this paragraph, for those interested, I'll explain my reasoning behind everything. The following is a video where I have written short reviews for every PC game I played in 2023. I tried each game for 30 minutes to see whether or not I like it, and if it kept me engaged for the whole 30, I wrote, recorded, and edited a review, stitching them together for what you're watching right now. Most games I played were released in 2023, but there are a handful released earlier, and the whole project is ordered by release date. If you want, you can start exploring the chapters now. Happy watching! Now that they're gone, I'm sure you have some questions. Mainly, why in 30 minutes, Dave? What good will that do me? Both are valid, so let me answer them. It was mid-2022, and I was working on my Atari video. That whole year, I had been recording 30 minutes of all the games I played to make the best of 2022 video I was going to make easier to find clips for. I was then struck with a burst of inspiration. What if the next year, instead of just recording the footage, I actually reviewed and made a video on each game, stitching them all together like I was doing for the Atari project? It'd be like a return of Dave's impressions in one big video, except I was playing the games for a shorter length of time. Which brings us to playing a game for 30 minutes. I imagine this to be a contentious point. Is that actually enough time to review a game? How can a game show you what it even is and does in 30 minutes, let alone if you like it or not? Well, for a lot of people, this feels like a valid criticism. Back when I made impressions videos, I would play a game for 10% of the time it would take to beat it, and I had viewers then who thought that wasn't enough to fully understand the games I covered. So what good is 30 minutes going to do? Well, here's the answer. I'm really making this video for myself. 30 minutes is more than enough time for me to key into whether a game is doing something interesting enough to want to continue playing it. That's the important part. If I like the game, I'll be fleshing out my thoughts when I play through it in the future. Think of this video like a time capsule. Years from now I can watch it and see which games I played in 2023 and what my thoughts and feelings were from testing them out. So that's what this is going to be. If I like the game enough to play it for 30 minutes, I wrote a review of my experience around 1 to 3 paragraphs long and turned it into a video. You should get a good idea about what each game I covered is, what it does, whether or not I liked it, and whether or not it's something you might be interested in trying yourself. There are 59 games I covered in 2023 with a handful from earlier years. I cover mostly indie games, but there are a few of the heavy hitters as well. I think fans of my work will enjoy this. Not only is there some good criticism and insight, if I do say so myself, but the limitations of my process makes itself known as well, encouraging discussion on what that means for the games in question. Is that enough foreshadowing? Okay, let's begin. I hope you enjoyed the journey through all the games I played on PC in 2023. The genre I'm most worried about when covering games for only 30 minutes is the RPG. Often they're slow to get started, slow to introduce their mechanics, and generally just slow to get an impression of unless you dedicate a few hours to them. The question I have is, will the game do enough of a good job to intrigue me to want to play more? Trails in the Sky and its myriad of sequels is a series I've heard talked positively about for years and have always been curious about. I was thinking about it a week or two before writing this script, and as if fortune intervened, I found that it was on sale when looking it up. It'd be silly not to buy it. So now it's good news and bad news time. The bad news first. I played 30 minutes before the first battle even took place. I think it's because I was fiddling around too much in the orb shop, trying to understand what the game wanted from me before I could advance the story. I decided I was going to keep playing until I fought my first battle, so that's what I did. It only took a few more minutes, thank goodness. But here's the good news. I really like the characters so far. The game opens with a father bringing home an injured boy and asking his daughter to help look after him. After the animated intro, time has advanced and the two kids have become friends, with the boy Joshua even referring to the man as Dad. I liked how headstrong and scatterbrained Estelle is, and already I feel like I want to join these two kids on whatever adventure this game has in store for them. I think the game looks good, even though I've never been a fan of isometric perspective. The sprite art is expressive and the music is fantastic. The combat seems to be based around movement, but at least in the first fight seemed quite standard as turn-based combat systems go. As I love turn-based combat in games like this, I'm interested to see how it becomes more complex over time. So yeah, I'm excited to play more. It'll be fun to see if I find the praise this game has received over the years is warranted or not. Maybe I'll have a critique on Trails in the Sky by 2025 or so. I've never played Dead Rising. I was in fellow YouTuber Dorkax's stream of the Dead Rising 3 DLC and asked him about what to start with. He suggested the first. I looked into it, and it was on sale for under $10, so I went for it. I liked the intro, flying into town taking pictures of zombie destruction before landing on the roof of a mall. When I get control of Frank, I wonder if he's got an old war wound, because his walk is one of the strangest shuffles I've come across in a 3D action game. Out in the mall proper, the barricades are working fine until the doors are open thanks to the stupidest woman alive. Fighting off the encroaching hordes, Frank is overwhelmed and saved by Otis. From there, I got a taste of leading survivors to the safe room and the boost in PP it gives. In 30 minutes, I was given a nice setup, but very little of the zombie action the series seems to be known for. Maybe that was made the focus in later titles, and this one is more about taking pictures and rescuing people. It may warrant playing through, just to see if I'm right. The most surprising thing about playing Fear and Hunger is that I wanted to keep playing more. I was introduced to the game through Super Eyepatchwolf's video. I enjoyed listening to his harrowing journey into these dark dungeons, but it seemed too mean-spirited and scary for me to ever want to play it myself. But the YouTube algorithm saw that I watched one video on the game, so it started recommending more. Curiously, I watched a couple more reviews, some story analysis, and even a Let's Play. The more time passed, the more I felt the itch to give the game a go, despite my, well, fear. When I looked at the Steam page that fateful day, I saw it was on sale and said, what the hell? Due to all the videos I watched, I knew the basics. I didn't stick around in the courtyard to get torn apart by the dogs. I hid from the guards and only got into fights when I needed to. I found wandering these dark and unknown hallways exciting, scrounging for resources in every crate and barrel, and going to the inventory screen to see what each new item did and what was written inside every book. I made a misstep getting sucked into the floor and ran into a witch who ended my run without resistance. I chose a new character and started exploring all over again. The scariest part of the game so far is the sound design. Sometimes it would become intense for no reason I could understand. And other times I was thrown off by my character's footsteps on a different surface. There is a tension with each step because I have no idea what tricks and traps the game will throw at me, what everything means, and what everything does. But in a shocking twist, I think I want to play Fear and Hunger to the end, to see and experience everything for myself, even if I ultimately regret the decision. I've always liked the idea of playing a game that uses an alternate history version of a PC desktop. Hypnospace Outlaw is set in 1999, when every teenager had their own garish webpage full of bad design and terrible music. I should know, I was a teenager in 1999. In that regard, Hypnospace captures the aesthetic perfectly. This is a different version of the internet that people access through a headband while they sleep. You're a volunteer enforcer combing through searches and web pages looking for violations of the user policies. Essentially, you're an internet cop. I only played through the first 2 cases and had a tricky time finding my way to what I was looking for, but for how much is thrown at you in the tutorial, the interface is easy to come to grips with and explore. I found this novel and a little amusing, but aside from seeing how far they take the aesthetic and the premise, cause I assume an overarching story is going to kick in at some point, I didn't have any desire to continue my community narking. Dicey Dungeons reminds me of my time with Slay the Spire. I didn't die playing it, but I assume you start again with the choice of a class of character. The levels are random, the enemies are random, and the cards you get from level ups and chests are random. How long will it take to make it to the end? Like many of these deck builders, the presentation is immaculate, with Dicey Dungeons going for a chalky playful look, despite some more sinister undertones. The game is easy to pick up and play, and serious decisions unfold quickly. It's the modifiers that create the tension, poison and weakness being the most egregious I came across, and I bet there's plenty of others too. So if roguelite deck builders are your thing, this looks to be a great addition to the genre, but honestly, I can't stand these types of games. I guess I find them too dicey. I was worried going into Borderlands 3. I loved the first Borderlands. I played through it 3 or 4 times, but I have never liked any of the sequels enough to play them through even once, not even the Telltale game. Things didn't start off great. There was too much plot waffle. I was almost 10 minutes in before I got to control my character for the first time. I know the cutscene with all 4 Vault Hunters working together is supposed to get you jazzed to try them out, but I just thought it'd be great if I was already controlling one of these guys and seeing what they could do. Then, I had to endure a few more minutes of claptrap dialogue before finally getting down to some shooting and looting. I managed to clear the camp and meet Lilith before my time was up. So what do I think? Well, the comedy didn't work for me, and I felt the gunplay pretty average. The strange part is, with that being said, I want to play more, which is always the most important thing about only playing 30 minutes, as the game compelled me to want to continue. I want to see how my character grows in power, and if I enjoy the shooting, the flow of combat, and questing as the game opens up. I've resigned myself to the fact that I likely won't find the game funny, and probably won't enjoy my time with it. but I'm wanting to see if that's true. I guess there's something here. Films sometimes use songs to elicit an emotional response. Games have played around with this, but it was Maquette's intro that got me thinking about the concept. Walking through this gorgeous garden, reading the writing on the wall, thematic, as this beautiful song with its vocal harmonies plays in the background. I was hooked. When will they ever learn? Maquette is a game about memory, specifically remembering a relationship. The wrapper for this story is a diorama of the space we are occupying. The gameplay is manipulating certain objects between the diorama and reality to be able to continue our journey through the protagonist's memories. They meet at a coffee shop and bond over their love of drawing. As someone who used to draw a lot but has given it up for no good reason, the dialogue impacted me, and I liked the two voice actors' performances. Basically, everything was hitting the right notes to interest Dave.
I mean, there was a time in elementary school when I was the girl who was good at drawing.
The girl who was good at drawing, I remember that girl.
The landscapes reminded me of The Witness, a striking use of color that is hyper-real, encouraging a closer inspection of the environment. And like The Witness, the majority of this majestic, explorable space is window dressing. It helps that the objects you can interact with stand out, and it's a testament to both games that I want to explore these spaces for their own sake. Despite being stumped for a while on a couple of the puzzles and the lack of much else to do, I was enamored by Maquette's presentation, and I want to see this story to its conclusion, whether it be sweet, melancholy, or a combination of the two. In last year's Best Games video, when talking about mini motorways, I mentioned that it's always been a compulsion of mine to restart a game if things aren't going smoothly. During the 30 minutes I spent with Slipways, I restarted multiple times. The game seems easy enough. Each planet has the ability to turn one type of resource into another. By dragging a slipway between planets, they can trade, fulfill their needs, and prosper. If only it were that simple. Sometimes you need to create a chain of planets just to fulfill the needs of one, and slipways cannot cross each other, so in creating one chain of planets, you might have blocked off another planet with a critical resource. Add to that a council of aliens that offer missions, a tech tree to research improvements, and who knows what other wrenches to throw in your plans, and I couldn't even get my feet off the ground. I'd link a few planets, discover a few others, and want to restart to try again to see if I have the basics down. It feels that as simple as this game is to control, it's going to get intensely complex. I'd very much like to keep restarting until I feel confident enough to successfully make my way through a whole game. Earlier I mentioned how RPGs are tough to talk about if one only plays them for 30 minutes, as you've only scratched the surface of what they have to offer. Fighting games may be worse. What makes a fighting game a daunting task to only sample for a short amount of time is usually there's a training mode that could take an hour or two on its own, and then there's testing out all the characters and finding the one that resonates with your personality. So here's how I approached Guilty Gear Strive. I played the tutorial and then backed out of the mission mode, which teaches you the nuances of the game. I went to arcade mode against the CPU, picked Chip Zanoff, who was my character back in Guilty Gear XX, which is the last game in the series I played, and like any fighting game beginner, I button mashed my way to victory. I was hoping while doing so I might pull off some cool moves, maybe fight a few enemies, see the landscapes, understand the push and pull of combat, and find out if I like the game or not. My plan went pretty well. I pulled off some special moves with Chip, even pulled off a couple special attack combos, and made it to Stage 8, which might have been the boss. Stage 1 was a story fight, which I lost against May, who I guess is Chip's protege. After that, I spammed my way through a host of cool-looking characters, some of who I remembered from XX like Bridget and Kai, and I made it to this imposing cyborg samurai who wrecked my What made this fight extra cool is that May joined me. Our attacks chipped away at him, but any hit he landed just lanced off health. That was where my button-mashing escapade ended. I think the game looks fantastic, is smooth as butter on my laptop, the music is laughably enjoyable, and most importantly, I want to keep playing. I want to go back into that mission training mode and learn how the game works. I want to try out all the characters and see if there's one I'd enjoy even more than Chip. I don't know if I'll be able to dedicate the time, but as a lapsed fighting game fan who never seems to find the time to dedicate to any one game in the genre, I can easily recommend this one. Games that delight in the wonkiness of their physics in me always get off on the wrong foot. I wonder how much of my dislike is the oddities of the system, and how much is how long it takes to feel comfortable with how the system works. I got more adept at web creation and traversal as I made my way through Webbed, especially once I made the switch from controller to mouse and keyboard. But it never felt good. If fiddly controls aren't a deal breaker, there's a cute game underneath. The first thing the game teaches you is the dance button. A bird has stolen your beloved, and it's only by completing odd jobs for the other insects of the forest that you can get them back. I started helping the ants put together a giant mech to fight the fire ants, having to pull up gears from deep underground. One piece seemed too heavy once I accidentally knocked it off a ledge, so I started searching for something else to do. I enjoyed the look of the game, and it's always nice to play something from an Australian indie developer, but the charm wasn't enough to overcome the frustration I felt in controlling this cute little spider. Far Cry 6 was a roller coaster of engagement. First off, the game's download is 170 gigabytes. Let me say that again. 170 gigabytes. I have a small solid-state drive in my laptop, so I debated if I even wanted to go through with downloading it. Apparently 100 gig of that was added as an HD texture update after the game came out. Seeing that I'm playing the game in 1080p, I really wish I had the option to ignore such a drain on my hard drive and internet connection. Now, when the game finally pre-cached and started up, I let the intro movie play out and was impressed by how beautiful it was. Then I started the game and was put off by how violent and bleak it was. You have people getting shot in the streets by the militia of an evil tropical island dictator. Escaping to a boat, the dictator comes on board to collect his runaway son, murders everyone, and miraculously you survive, washed up on a beach. Your dying friend tells you to find the resistance, and then the game begins. At this point, the violence and savagery turned me off the game. I was pretty certain I would leave things there, but then I looked out to the ocean. I saw how the sunlight glinted through the palm trees, how lush everything was, and I started to play. The whole time, following the blue flowers through the jungle, I was gobsmacked. The game won me over right there, and I hadn't even fired a gun yet. I actually didn't fire a gun my entire playtime. I stealth killed a couple militia members with my machete and made it to the rebel camp. I got a talking to by the leader, and here's the other thing that made me smile. The map of the island shown to me has blue pathways everywhere. They were carved by previous resistance fighters, and are a way to get around and find supplies while avoiding the greater island forces. Suddenly, the potential of the game came alive for me. Not only was I fighting back against a brutal dictator, I was doing it because of how beautiful this place is and how beautiful it could be if the people weren't suffering while being slaughtered by the madman in power. I have to say that the appeal of taking down a member of the wealthy elite with his own private military is an appealing power fantasy these days. For that reason alone, I think I'm adding Far Cry 6 to my critique list. We'll see how the holding plays out whenever I get around to it. This is my first Monster Hunter game, and I gotta say, I'm not a fan. There's too much front loading. Part of why I like the idea of playing for only 30 minutes is to see how long it takes a game to get into the core of what the game is. And if there hasn't been significant gameplay, if the build-up intrigues me enough to want to continue. I didn't slay a monster until over 20 minutes in. It was in the tutorial quest, which didn't start until close to 20 minutes in. The bulk of my time was walking around the town and getting acquainted with the merchants and quest givers. There was a little bit of a movement tutorial, but again, I only briefly got to engage with the monster hunting part of the game. As an introduction, it was terrible. I didn't know if there was a lock-on or not. I couldn't seem to chain together hits or actually hit the enemy with my sword, and before I could get a handle on anything, my companions took out the monsters. I head back to town, and my time is up. From everything I've heard, hunting monsters, especially the big ones, is a thrilling gameplay experience. Sadly, I did not get that impression from fumbling through the attacks on these little ones. The game decided that time was better spent showing me all the facets of my base of operations. But the charm of the village and its characters wasn't enough to make up for not being able to hunt monsters. Part of the reason I'm undergoing this video experiment is to understand how a game can grab me within its first 30 minutes. Ghostwire Tokyo is an outlier. The intro had me completely switched off. Strange ghost thing inhabits young man in accident. They're fighting for control. Mist kills a bunch of people, and a parade of spooks walks down the street. As far as I was concerned, I wasn't given sufficient reason to care about the characters or the setup. Then the gameplay starts. Wait, is this a first-person shooter? And it's kind of a rail shooter with its aim and energy mechanics? Well, color me intrigued. Then the game has me walk down the rain-soaked streets of Shibuya, and all I could think is that the art direction is gorgeous. As I made my way through the hospital, this appreciation would only grow. There are some beautiful visuals on display, and as I kept thinking about the game after the 30 minutes was up, I wanted to continue playing it just to find out what other spectacular sights I might see. As for the game itself, well, it's got stealth mechanics and an upgrade system, but it seems mostly interested in giving the player a sense of power despite it being a horror game, or at least flirting with horror imagery. I wasn't exactly won over by what I played, but those beautiful visuals kept appearing. I also think it was too much for my poor laptop's GPU, as I had far too many instances of frame stutter, but it might be worth persevering through it despite not exactly being won over by the gameplay or the characters. Ghostwire Tokyo is an oddity in that I can't stop thinking about it despite not enjoying my time with it. I think these conflicting feelings are enough to warrant a critique. I've been wanting to play this one for a while. I'll say it elsewhere in this video, but I love voxels, and when those voxels are mixed with gorgeous lighting as well as wanton destruction, it's a match made in heaven. Teardown is aptly named. You're given an objective, given the means of destruction, and it's up to your creativity to accomplish the mission, usually by smashing things to bits. Now the third mission threw me for a loop. The company lot I infiltrated in Mission 2 is where Mission 3 takes place, and now they have alarms attached to the objectives. I thought there might be a way to deactivate the alarms, but no. The goal of the level is to arrange things so that once the first alarm is triggered, you can grab everything you need and get out as quickly as possible. Smash through gates, blow open holes in walls, and use alternate routes like pipes to concoct a plan of attack. This planning phase got me excited. Suddenly, I was seeing the level in a whole new light, and not just cause the sun was coming up as I explored the space. Would my plans lead to success? Well, my phone's alarm went off before I was able to trigger the in-game alarms, but I'm looking forward to returning to this mission and figuring out the best way through. Finally, I'll just mention that the destruction itself is highly satisfying, as it should be. The sledgehammer tears chunks out, and the sound effects of what surface you're laying waste to are always delightful. The physics of opening doors or throwing objects is a little wonky, but I see that as disincentivizing using doors when a hole in the wall works just as well, and is more fun. Smashing through things with a vehicle is the icing on the cake. Kudos to Teardown for scratching that destructive itch that is in all of us in such a visually pleasing and cathartic package. Taiji was described to me as a 2D version of The Witness, and yeah, that's accurate. Instead of drawing lines, we are placing white squares on a grid, and instead of a strange island with a mountain at the center, we are on a strange floating mountain island. Just like The Witness, the player can wander around and try out another section of the game world if they get stuck. I was wandering around a lot. Finally, when exploring the peak, which has breathtaking pixel art, I found a set of puzzles I thought I understood. I was making progress. Then I got to a variation on the theme, and suddenly nothing that I tried was working. Yep, that's a familiar feeling from The Witness. Having spent a little time away from the game, I have an idea for something that might work, but I don't think I have the time or desire to unlock a whole new island of secrets. If you loved The Witness and are looking for more, I can wholeheartedly recommend this. I think a game like LEGO Bricktales is long overdue. As a puzzle game, using LEGO bricks to solve problems through building sounds wonderful. The downside, at least in my short time with Bricktales, is it amounts to playing a LEGO-themed bridge-building physics game. I've never liked physics bridge builders, even World of Goo, mainly because I'm terrible at them. I feel like either I make a simple solution that works but is boring, or what the game wants from me is too complex to grasp, although the latter never happened in Bricktales. Judging by the slow pace of the tutorial section and the dialogue, not to mention that it's LEGO, the game seems geared for younger players. I appreciated the tutorials because the controls can be fiddly, especially when it comes to block placement. Not to the game's detriment, and there are some cool shortcuts, but building with LEGO feels like it should be smoother. In the end, I still think it's a neat idea, and maybe things get more interesting as the game continues, but I didn't want to keep building boring bridges and then having the game ask me if I wanted to get more creative with it. It's appropriate that a game about hunting vampires in the Old West is drenched in sunlight. I felt like I was playing an old action game from the late 2000s or early 2010s. Walk through a section, maybe climb over something or jump up and down. Press the action button when something glows. Stop every now and then for a fight in a small arena. Each fight throws more mechanics and combinations at the player until it culminates in a boss fight. Level 2 starts. Give the player a new weapon and a gun version of the counter move from the Arkham games. Throw in a bunch of explosions and gore, and have the player character be a gruff hard ass. Yep, it ticks all the boxes. But does it tick those boxes exceptionally well? I don't think so. I think it ticks them competently well. Aside from some graphical stutter, which could be my laptop, I had no faults to give Evil West. I could see myself playing through it and enjoying every step of the journey. The thing is, because it's competent and not exceptional, I'm in no hurry to test out that theory. Too many other games, you know? There were moments of Solar Ash that had me falling in love with it. Certain visuals early on, and then when the new area opened up, joyously following the whims of exploration, knowing in the back of my mind that I was being corralled by the level design, but feeling like my progress through the space was thanks to my curiosity. I love the elements that aren't explained that I ended up intuiting the more I played. But sadly, that sense of feeling lost in an alien world had its negatives. For all the dialogue early on, I had no idea what was happening, and felt the exposition getting in the way. I found the timed sections too simplistic and not conducive to the flow promised by the game's movement. Actually, that was a big part of my issue with the game. For all the supposed smooth skating along dreamy landscapes, controlling Rei felt anything but smooth. The controls weren't fighting me, but I didn't feel like I could express who the character was through the play provided. Maybe that changes as the game continues. I didn't dislike my time with Solar Ash and can easily recommend it, but I'm not interested in continuing. Well, this is a delight! Following instructions to wrap colored yarn around pegs in order to make pictures, backed by relaxing piano music. One of the main reasons I love games like Picross so much is having a finished picture when the level ends, however rudimentary, and thinking, I made this! Wooloop has a similar feeling, but as there is no puzzle element, it's more laid back. Like sewing, crochet, or needlepoint, I could see this game being a fun diversion as one watches television or listens to a podcast. Using the mouse, I found stretching the yarn on larger projects a little annoying, and for a while, I thought I had to hold the left click down, so my wrist was under some stress. But these are minor quibbles, and for the most part, I lost myself in moving the yarn around the pegs. This is an easy recommendation. What I appreciate about A Space for the Unbound is its atmosphere. Walking or running through the streets in the prologue gives a sense of time, place, and texture. Talking to random passers-by, petting cats, all while trying to help your friend. There's a supernatural element, being able to dive into the hearts of people to help soothe their spirits. But what really sold me on the game was after the prologue. Our protagonist Atma wakes up in class, and his girlfriend Rhea and him start to craft a bucket list of things they want to do instead of planning their futures after high school. The dialogue and what they added to the list was so cute and touching that I wanted to spend more time in this world with these characters. The prologue was so unlike that conversation that I wonder what this game is actually about, and I look forward to finding out. I never played the original Colossal Cave adventure. Actually, my knowledge of text adventures is lacking, but I did grow up playing the graphical adventures of Sierra and then LucasArts. I was looking forward to playing Colossal Cave as it's made by Ken and Roberta Williams, responsible for the adventure games I first played, remaking the game that captured their imaginations. Of course, I no longer have the patience for the obtuse and frustrating nature of a lot of the old school adventure games, so I wondered how Colossal Cave would be modernized, and given that it was a text adventure, how that world would be translated to locations a player can walk through. I think the traversal works pretty well. There is a sense of mystery, as we don't know why we're here and what this cave is, so it only seemed natural to start exploring. Everything else felt like it was getting in the way. The narrator with his overflowing exposition about the areas we can see in front of us, or how moving through the terrain itself is a bit slow and it's easy to get caught moving across slopes. I like that in regards to dangerous obstacles like the snake, the game allows us to observe it and back off, only making it dangerous if we persist on being silly. In the same vein, I walked off a ledge just to see if I could, and the narrator offered to revive me, costing me points. Actually, that's what made things weird for me. How the game seems so focused on score rather than exploration or motivation. I know score was important to the early adventure games, but it feels vestigial here, like it's only along for the ride because it was a part of the original. The whole game feels like even though it's been modernized, it's not enough. It's got one foot firmly in the past, but hasn't made enough of the compromises necessary to bring it to the future. Now, this could be me venting, because for the life of me, I couldn't figure out what to do next. I couldn't work out a way past the snake, across the chasm, or how to catch the bird. The map system and the note-taking functions are pretty cool though. Yeah, I don't know about this one. It feels like fans of the original won't like the compromises, and yet there hasn't been enough compromise to give new players a reason not to give up before they begin. I'll be interested to see if this finds an audience. I've never played the original Persona 3, but have heard through the grapevine that the PSP port, which has now come to PC, is a shell of its former self. I got this feeling when I saw stills of animated cutscenes instead of animated cutscenes. The character art looked fine, but there did seem to be a lack of sound effects or ambiance, especially during the pivotal moment when my character awakened his persona. I don't know if the original looked this basic during the fights, but coming off of playing Persona 4 last year, I was shocked. The story itself is already intriguing, with the idea of there being an extra hour after midnight in which normal people turn into coffins while shadows roam the streets, and I liked the foreshadowing I got from Yukari, talking about how her dad died in a mysterious explosion years ago. Of course, the game didn't open up in the 30 minutes I played. This is a Persona game after all, so I don't know how the social links and how one chooses to spend their day works. While I would love to play this to find out, I get the feeling it might be better to play the PS2 original. Let me know if I'm off base with that idea. Man, I wanted to like this one. It's a cel-shaded brawler where the attacks are in time with the music. The animation is fluid, there's character imbued in every action, and it controls well. So what went wrong? Well, I think I never fully got to grips with timing my attacks to the music. Not just my attacks, my jumps, my dodges, everything. At first I thought I was having a latency issue, which is why I wasn't able to enjoy Metal Hellslinger last year. I use a flat screen monitor while playing games on a wireless controller while wearing wireless headphones. There's got to be some latency involved. With Hi-Fi Rush, that might have had something to do with it, but even with the visual indicator, I was still having problems. I mean, it's been a hot minute since I last played a rhythm game on my PC, but I'm usually not this bad. Near the end of my time, I was vibing a little more with the game, getting some perfect hits in, which is where the damage lies, but the joy of combat was never there for me. I also found the main character obnoxious. That's basically 2 big strikes against it right there. A pity. I never played the original Dead Space due to my fear of horror games, so I don't have any memories influencing how I feel about this remake. I think it starts off way too slowly, as the characters endlessly talk before they crash into the Ishimura. This might be a reoccurring observation throughout this year, but I'm finding myself less patient for games that don't let the player engage with the game portion of it as soon as possible. I still love me some cutscenes and drama, but it's got to engage me, and this definitely didn't. Once the Necromorphs showed up, I was on board. Docking joke. I wonder if the fidelity of modern horror titles do the games a disservice by being too shiny and showing too much detail. It's been a long-held truth with horror media that the imagination does a better job scaring a viewer than anything you can show the audience, and I think video games are no exception. A good example is that I was playing on the easiest difficulty, killing necromorphs in 1 or 2 blasts of the plasma cutter, but there was a section where in order to open a door, I had to remove the fuse for the lights. The place went dark, and the monsters crawled out of their monster closets. Despite my ability to quickly put the enemies down and having an overabundance of ammunition in which to do so, I felt dread pour over me when I realized what just happened and that I'd need to be fumbling around in the dark. I think part of why this sequence works so well is the sound design. The creak of the ship and then hearing the screeching, not knowing exactly where it's coming from. And as we're talking about sound design, I would be remiss if I didn't praise the sloppy and satisfying squelch when you stomp through a necromorph corpse. It's a nice release of tense aggression towards what can at times be a terrifying foe. So, while nothing about Dead Space was overly scary, I enjoyed my time with it. Not enough to want to continue, but I am curious about how the original plays now. A friend gifted it to me on Steam a long time ago, so maybe I should add it to the list. If you've already watched me talk about the original in this video, well, now you know why. There's been an apocalypse. Our character is about to leave not only their home, but their town. Nobody leaves the town. There was a cataclysm related to a dreaming sickness, and it sounds like society collapsed. The start of the game is finding mementos to create a protection amulet for when you go out into the unknown. Armed with a voice recorder and a Polaroid camera, we document the world as we pass through it, uncovering its stories in hopes that whoever reads this journal in the future can learn of this time and place. This is a slow game, and by that I mean it moves at a reflective pace. While I found the collection aspect of the journal interesting, creating stories out of snapshots and ambient sound, and I was compelled to learn more about what befell this world, as well as seeing what lies outside the town, it just felt too slow and plodding to really get its hooks in me. Maybe I can revisit this when I'm in the mood for a game that takes it easy. The only reason I'm playing Wanted Dead is I saw Jacob Geller's video on the game and decided that I needed to give it a go. All I can say is yikes! The cutscenes before the game started were fine. A little long, and the dialogue wasn't that strong, but they were fine. The tutorial was also fine. I thought to myself, that's a lot of combat options, but in my mind that just meant more variety in dispatching enemies. Then I played the game, and did not enjoy myself at all. The enemies will rip you to shreds with their machine guns. If you use cover, they'll chuck grenades, and it's not worth it to use the automatic rifle because aiming and knockback are atrocious, with most enemies seeming to be bullet sponges. I found the best course of action was to sprint up to an enemy, tank all the incoming fire, alternate between the sword and handgun buttons until the enemy died, and only back off if I needed to use a healing item. That got the job done, but I did run out of healing items. In the final section, I was close to death, and having to replay it, unless one of my squad mates would bring me back to life again like they did the first time, was a horrifying prospect. Playing Wanted Dead was not enjoyable, and sadly I didn't get to see anything from Jacob Geller's video that made me want to try the game in the first place. Yeesh. Wow, I wasn't expecting to have to control two characters at the same time like I was playing Brothers: A Tale of Two Sons. In Blanc, we're controlling a wolf pup and a fawn as they search through the snowy tundra for their packs. Just like in Brothers, controlling two characters at the same time in 3D space does my head in. I was gaining some coordination near the end of my time with it, but I knew it was never going to go smoothly. The game looks great, and as pacing and vibe goes, it's very laid back. No hurry, even though these critters are probably starving. It doesn't take long for the unique abilities of the pup and fawn to be needed, but it can be fiddly finding the right part of the landscape you need to stand on to trigger the ability to jump to the next section. All in all, nice looking game, a cool concept, heh heh, but ultimately too fiddly for me to want to continue with it. Returnal is amazing. The game is dripping with mystery and atmosphere. We find ourselves crash-landed on an alien planet, but when we get our first weapon, it appears to be on our own corpse. There are audio logs left by us, but Celine doesn't remember recording them. The point is to find the signal. Every time we die, we wake up at the crash site, but the map has changed. We seem to keep upgrades, but like most games of this nature, learning the ins and outs of the world and powering up will likely be a slow process. It's a good thing that movement and combat feel so good. Like most games with a single jump, I wanted a double jump almost immediately, but the dash is wonderful, and I have no doubt further movement options will be unlocked. I liked unloading clips into enemies and dodging their bullet hell-esque fire. I imagine the bullet hell aspect of the game becomes absolutely bonkers, if the pedigree of the studio is anything to go by. I was highly impressed by Returnal. Hell, I wasn't even expecting it to run on my laptop, but it was averaging 50 to 60 FPS on medium settings during the benchmark, and I never had an issue while playing the game. Apparently, the way the game uses the PS5 controller adds to the experience, but as I don't have one of those, I'll be making my way forward with my Xbox One controller. This is a game I look forward to continuing. What makes the Yakuza games so enjoyable to spend time in is the city of Kamurocho. Sure, it's got side quests, activities, and a host of checklists to complete, but it's the bustling streets themselves, full of too many people, some of them waiting to get their asses kicked, that makes the games come alive. It creates a space that the player wants to return to and spend time in. A sense of familiarity when one starts a new game in the series. What makes Like a Dragon Ishin exciting is the prospect of being able to hang out and explore a town in 1800s Japan. I mean, yes, we're playing a Kiryu stand-in, and in the intro there's a Majima stand-in, but it feels like the novel approach of throwing these personalities back in time in order to explore a story about samurai, class, and the West's growing influence on this island nation is a selling point in itself. Unfortunately, I didn't feel pulled in by the inciting incident of Sakamoto Ryoma standing up to some Joshi bullies, and being sentenced to death for it. Although just googling the name of Ryoma to make sure I spelled it correctly reveals that this is a real person who made a mark on history. So this is not just a game where we get to experience the flow of life in this era, but it's using real historic figures to tell its story. Whether or not the tale told is true to what actually happened, or if these figures are just used to lend gravity to the narrative remains to be seen. It feels like it's going to be a little of both. Unfortunately, I hit what I can only refer to as a soft roadblock. The game was trying to teach me how to parry by hitting the left bumper the instant I'm attacked while holding a weapon. No matter what I tried, no matter how often I looked back at the tutorial screen explaining it, I just could not get the parry to work. I thought maybe I needed my own sword, but then in the equipment screen, the game wouldn't let me equip it. Like most times when this happens, I'm probably overlooking something simple, but it made me leave my time with the game on a sour note. The fight beforehand, introducing the combo system, had a nice heft and flow to it, so I imagine it's as fun to get into fights in Ishin as it is in other Yakuza titles. If I could have gotten past that parry fight, I might have wanted to see how the rest of the game played out. Simplistically, Wo Long is Neo with more of a focus on parrying and set in China rather than Japan. There's a lot more going on, but that's the byline. This may be a personal bugbear, but I dislike when a game has a butt ton of mechanics, throwing them all at the player in the opening section with the idea of, well, they'll be playing this game for a while, there's no need to know how everything works right now, you'll figure it out, we just want you to know it's all here. I mean, I could just focus on parrying and combat, moving through the town under siege, but I see wizardry and I want to check that out. I want to understand spirit attacks, and then there's this whole threat mechanic. How the more enemies you kill, the number goes up, but it's also an indicator of a tough foe. I'm assuming damage and spirit rise, seeing that these special martial arts techniques are only unlocked at a high enough number. If you're killed, the enemy that killed you has a larger threat number, and the game makes a big deal when you take revenge on it. And then there's the collection aspect from Neo, picking up armor and weapons all over the place, and constantly looking at what you're wearing for the best bonuses. I don't know if it's the PC port or my laptop, but I was getting a lot of stuttering moving around and engaging with the combat system. When it all worked, it was fun enough, but nothing really grabbed my attention, you know? Plus, I still need to go back and play through Neo. Why do I keep trying horror games when they terrify me so much? Because I'm drawn into the worlds and premises of the good ones. I want to see if this game is the one to make me overcome my fear. The Fatal Frame Project Zero games trigger a special memory. When my buddy Andrew and I rented the first one for the PS2 on a whim while browsing the shelves at our local Blockbuster. Something about the understated atmosphere of the abandoned Japanese locations combined with the mechanic of having to get up close and personal to the ghosts with a camera has always fascinated me. I've not played any other game in the series, but have always kept an eye on them from afar. Mask of the Lunar Eclipse, the fourth game in the series, has come to PC, co-directed by the infamous Suda51. During my time with the game, I was on edge, waiting for something truly terrifying to take place. I played through the prologue and a short ways into Chapter 1. And you know what? Nothing too bad happened. But that comes with a caveat. There were no outright jump scares. Instead, what I felt was a slowly rising tension. The atmosphere of the game is great, slowly walking around this muted, abandoned building on an island in the middle of nowhere. The ghosts do show themselves, but mainly when our character's back is turned. The horror is in knowing something our character doesn't. I finally made my way to the camera obscura and used it to take a picture of an encroaching spirit, but then that character was overwhelmed before her long-lost friend follows her to the island, beginning the game properly. One reason I was waiting for a jump scare was how deliberate the movements are. The run button is not so much a run as a shuffle. I wondered if it wasn't faster to just walk. Every door opened is a laborious process, and I was waiting for a ghost to appear on the other side each time. To pick up an item, the player has to hold down the button as our character reaches out for it. Nothing happened, but we all know eventually something will reach out and grab us. Each item picked up and each door opened will carry the tension of, will this be the time? And that's effective horror. So, while I had a pretty good time with the game, all things considered, the idea of the anxiety and horror of the game acting like a slow boil for the duration of its runtime makes me more scared than I would be if the game was full of jump scares and terrifying monsters. I think it's why that couple of days spent with the first game all those years ago sticks with me. Maybe that means this is a good test case to rid me of my fear in regard to horror games. Maybe not, but either way, that sounds like future Dave's problem. In 2014, a game called Never Alone came out, which was from the perspective of the native peoples of Alaska. I remember thinking how games are such a great medium to explore and learn about other cultures, and as the years have gone on, I haven't really seen that happen. Enter Tchia, a whimsical Wind Waker-esque adventure set in a land inspired by New Caledonia. In my time spent with the game, I played through the inciting incident where Tchia's dad is discovered by the ruler of these islands and captured. Failing in a rescue attempt, we find ourselves on a boat in the middle of the sea and are tasked with freeing our father. The start was showing off some of the game's systems, such as gliding off high places, putting lots of food in our backpack, or shooting things with our slingshot. Very Breath of the Wild. That's 2 Zelda comparisons so far. But what interested me most was the rhythm game sections. First using 2 ferns, and then later with the ukulele, there are long sections supporting a song. The game uses the languages of New Caledonia, and it's this focus on music, culture, and how lush and vibrant the islands look that makes me want to continue exploring this world and seeing what other delights the game has to offer. I just wish I had some better performance. My laptop was really struggling during the kidnapping cutscene. In my best games I played in 2022 video, I mentioned that Laura Shigihara was releasing a follow-up to her game Raccoon this year, and I worried it would emotionally wreck me like the first game. Apparently, I'm not the only one with that fear, as Laura made an update post on Steam about how this is a shorter and more lighthearted affair than Raccoon was. In the 30 minutes I spent with it, it just seems like more Raccoon to me, and that's great! Raccoon was as funny and cute as it was sad. The game starts with a salaryman named Mr. Saitou drinking himself silly after a hard day at work, ending up in hospital after a nasty fall. We meet a kid in the hospital who draws these creatures called llama worms. They all have the name Saitou, but they have nicknames as well. Mr. Saitou goes to sleep and wakes up as a llama worm in an office. Here we talk to the employees, find metrics for Bosto, and avoid the annoying Irritato. After getting an important number to engineering, it's off to the bar for some boss-mandated fun. That's where I left things. I can see that Mr. Saitou will have an overall lighter tone. Instead of a kid dealing with cancer, we play a man who's working himself to death. The circumstances speak to a better life after a lesson or two is learned, and with the same enjoyable art, music, and writing to accompany the journey, I look forward to seeing where this tale takes me. Back when I reviewed iPhone games, I played a lot of them with a go collect resources, come back to camp, and use them to upgrade loop. So much so that unless a game accomplishes this gameplay loop particularly well or in a novel way, I'm not interested. Oh, and I guess I should also mention that I don't like fishing minigames. So yeah, Dredge is a fishing game where you go and collect fish during the day to sell to a small town in order to pay off your debt, grow the town, and upgrade your fishing vessel, which allows you to haul in better fish and more of them. It's also got a horror atmosphere where if you're out in the fog at night, panic sets in. There's something weird and creepy going on in the town, so I'm sure that's a hook to keep the player on the line. Fishing metaphors! Yeah, I think this looks and plays great, but the core loop is just not something I enjoy. Even if it does have a relaxing pace which plays against the uneasiness of the atmosphere. I'm sorry, thinking about this game loop just dredges up a lot of bad memories. Now this may sound silly, but after watching the trailer for Afterimage, what made me want to play it was the sound effect when your character swings their sword. I'm easily won over by a sound effect that hits me in just the right way, and this is one of those. Oh yes, and the game is rich and lush in pleasant detail, but man, that sound! Afterimage doesn't start off in the best way, throwing a lot of lore at you before dropping you in a tutorial section without knowing who you are or why you're here. Maybe the lore adequately explained these questions, but my eyes glazed over pretty quickly. After getting the basics down, there's a boss with the second phase you're supposed to lose to, and then the game begins in earnest. We follow a hooded figure who seems to know what's up, and are kinda left to our own explorative devices. I thought a lot about Hollow Knight while playing this. The trees that heal you and reset the enemies also fill in the map with the places you've explored, but I can also see the DNA of ARPGs like Path of Exile, with its outward branching skill tree and the accumulation of new weapon types. Combat seems simplistic, but that's gotta change as the game continues, right? It's weird. Thinking about individual parts of Afterimage, I like a lot about it, but it doesn't really fit together as a compelling whole. There's enough there to make me want to play more, but I have this fear that as I play more of it, my enthusiasm for the game will stay at the same tepid level of, it's alright, I guess. I always wanted to try out Genshin Impact, I just never got around to it. So, when I heard people talking favorably about Honkai Star Rail, their follow-up, I thought I'd give it a try. For a free-to-play sci-fi RPG, I can say it's alright. It looks nice, but the start of the intro really throws you in the deep end, only alluding to the greater scope of what's going on. You play a husk that has some special artifact inside you put there by the ladies you play in the intro, and now another group of characters has awakened you. On the way, there's a couple of battles showing off the turn-based combat system, which is kinda cool once exploiting weaknesses are explained. The thing that really stuck out to me was how enjoyable I found the voice acting.
Yeah. Where did you send it, Silverwolf?
Some random coordinates, not important.
I played in English, and the characters have a lot of personality. That alone sorta makes me want to keep playing to see what the game is actually about. Maybe when I finally run out of other things to play. I will say that for a game based around microtransactions, nothing about the first 30 minutes got its hooks into me financially or narratively, and it's probably for the best. Bramble is like playing a Grimm's fairy tale. Young brother running off into the woods at night to chase after his sister, and then they find themselves in a world of wonder. I was getting a vibe early on that reminded me of Limbo, so I kept expecting an enemy to appear and the kid to die horribly. But that didn't happen. Maybe it does later. I walked around, found a glowing rock, played around with it, and then spent far too much time playing Gnome and Go Seek. I think the sound is supposed to guide your eye, but I couldn't find the little buggers for the life of me. The one aspect that kept pushing me through was moments of grandeur, when the camera would pull back and I was treated to a painterly visage. I don't know if that's enough to push me further, considering the sparse and uninspired gameplay I've encountered so far, but this might be a fun game for younger players. Although, with the content warning that appeared before the game started, perhaps not. Live Alive presents the player with 7 characters to choose from, each its own scenario. The dilemma is, what does a new player choose to have the best introduction to what the game is? I picked the game's default choice, which is a bot called Cube. Seeing this is an RPG, originally made for the Super Nintendo, I wanted to play until I had engaged with the combat system. Now, just like earlier with Trails in the Sky, my alarm went off without seeing what the combat system has to offer. Yes, there was the video game Captain Square that showcases said combat, but that doesn't count. I wanted to have a proper in-game story fight. To experience this, I kept playing. And I kept playing. And I kept playing. Eventually saving and quitting, wondering if I had chosen the right character. Looking into it afterwards, the Cube chapter has no combat except right at the end, but yet it's still recommended as a first choice because of the narrative presented. And yeah, I can see that. The whole setup is very Alien. The movie, not the concept. A spaceship crew awake from stasis. There's a military man on board escorting his precious cargo, and then things start going wrong. You play a bot created by one of the crew, and you follow them around as things get progressively worse. I'm enamored with how the pixel art has been updated and presented, with the music and English voice acting both being of equally high quality.
Please, there's no need to get so upset.
I still think I might have chosen the wrong character for a first impression, as I don't have a strong desire to continue, but it might be cool to see just how varied the stories told are, especially when they look and sound like this. Humanity is a game where you play as an ethereal dog who barks to lead the throngs of humans towards the light. In the first few levels, once I had worked out the steps needed for the solution, I restarted so I wouldn't let one single soul walk off the edge of the map into oblivion. A couple levels later, the game assuaged my guilt, assuring me that the souls that fall off the world simply find themselves walking right back at the door the wild throng appears from. Even with this new knowledge, I would pause the game at the start of the level, trying to work out the steps so that I wouldn't lose anyone. Weirdly, the ability to pause the game and other useful options like fast forwarding are locked behind the special level goals, leading the Goldie humans to the light without harm. If these walk off the ledge, you have to restart, and some are hidden. I'm sure this will change as the game continues, but I wanted to collect each Goldie before I moved on. There's something hypnotic about the mass of people jumping and climbing their way across these sparse, video gamey constructions, and I definitely want to play more to see what other puzzling oddities and wonders the game has to offer. System Shock is one of the many games I didn't play when it came out. I've played the sequel, but whenever I've seen footage of the original, it just seemed too archaic to interface with and appreciate. In the intro of the remake, the hacker is arrested by company security and asked to remove the ethical constraints on their space station's AI, the infamous Shodan. I reacted negatively to this. It's so corny. Oh, so the player is responsible for the AI running amok. I assumed that it was an addition to the remake to give Shodan greater context, rather than just being an AI who turned evil. Before writing the script, I watched the original intro on YouTube. Turns out that's exactly how it went in that game too. Whoops. And things didn't really pick up for me. Oh, don't get me wrong, this is an amazing remake. It's fluid to play, and the aesthetic reminds me of my memories playing the demo all those years ago. I love how while there are hints towards where to go and what to do, the player is mainly left to their own devices. I started exploring the medical bay. I would attack the zombies, haywire robots, and cyborgs I came across while listening to audio logs and reading emails. You know, classic immersive sim stuff. Eventually, I learned that it's best to destroy the cameras so Shodan can't see what you're up to, and I started obtaining keycards to open all the locked doors. I was acquiring new weapons and enjoying the feeling of feeling lost in a video game world, and that feeling doubled when I first jumped into cyberspace. Have you played Descent? Flying a spacecraft around a world of truly 3 dimensions always did my head in. The idea that you could change what was up or down with the rotation of your craft, and that the reorientation was so fluid. To be honest, that freedom of movement has always made me feel nauseous. Cyberspace is like that. I don't exactly know what my purpose in there was, but I gained some abilities, rode some cyber streams, defeated a host of security programs, and finally blew a connection up and was booted back into meat space. What a wild change of pace. Overall, I think this is a fantastic remake, but I just wasn't feeling connected to it. I think the lack of clear goals and direction has a bit to do with it. Yes, the lady who contacted me when I woke up likely told me what I should be doing, but it's an audio log. I was only half paying attention, and having to go back to that conversation to remind myself what I should be doing doesn't sit well with me. And I guess while I liked exploring room by room, I wasn't enjoying it enough to warrant continuing with the game. I hope it does well though. I'd love to see what Night Dive do with System Shock 2. I was out of the loop on this one. When Oxenfree II dropped on Steam in July, I said, since when were they making Oxenfree II? I had to play it. I liked the original Oxenfree, it being an early critique on my channel. I wondered if I should replay it before jumping into the sequel, but I also wanted to see what Oxenfree II was like for the purposes of this video. We are playing new characters, and we're now next door to Edwards Island where the first game took place. We play Riley, who starts the game with shit already going down before we cut to the intro. She's been tasked with placing transmitters on the island to read some strange signals. We meet Jacob, who is her partner, and the two climb to the peak to plant the transmitter. The game is as lush and gorgeous as I remember the original being. Maybe more so. I do find the animation of the characters a little wonky, especially Jacob's overly long arms, but since the people are such a small part of the frame, the environment taking center stage, it's not too distracting. The dialogue system returns, where you pick your next line of the conversation. You can interrupt a character talking, and if you look at a hotspot, the current conversation will be put on hold to comment on the hotspot before resuming the initial dialogue. It still works great, and I wonder how the system has been changed or improved since their last game. I played until things got weird. Time plays a part like it did in the first game, as well as reliving events. I'm sure, like the original, it gets quite spooky too. Basically, I'm already hooked, and I look forward to revisiting the first game and then getting to enjoy the sequel sometime soon. I'm usually not one to let hype ruin a game for me, but none of us are immune to it. I've heard nothing but positives about Baldur's Gate 3. How it's a triumph for not only computer RPGs, but for AAA gaming. How it's one of those exceptional, once-in-a-generation games. I was looking forward to not only falling in love with BG3, but maybe it would give me the kick in the pants I need to finally play through the first 2 Baldur's Gate games, and the first 2 Divinity Original Sin games as well. Neither are needed to enjoy this, but I'll take any reason I can find to check a game I want to play off my list. One reason I wasn't completely won over is that I saw so little of the game. This is my fault, as I got stuck in the character creator. None of the pre-made characters interested me, so I got distracted picking my race and class, and then fine-tuning my appearance, as the randomizer wasn't showing me anything I liked the look of. From there, we have a lengthy intro that's as impressive as it is disturbing before we have to escape from a crashed Mind Flayer ship. I got a taste of the dialogue system. I got a taste of using dice rolls to see whether or not I passed a skill check, and I got a taste of the combat. The fight itself was simple, but I was overwhelmed at the options available to me. No wonder people are gobsmacked at what the game has to offer. If combat holds so much possibility, then I can only imagine what questing and dialogue have to offer. Heck, the brief time I spent looking at the inventory screens overwhelmed me. My time came to an end while I was searching for a way to get this lady out of the pod she was stuck in. I couldn't figure it out. Maybe I shouldn't have killed that possessed brain that was talking to me earlier. Baldur's Gate 3 feels more like a sequel to Divinity Original Sin 2 than Baldur's Gate 2, and considering that was the last game Larian made, it makes sense. I'll end by saying I'm intimidated, while still desiring to play more. I want the game to open up so I can see what everyone else is going on about, but I think I'll wait before returning. Not only to give myself a chance to play the other games I mentioned, but maybe by then there's been enough patches or I've upgraded my PC, as on medium settings, my laptop was struggling with transitions. I see Turbo Overkill as the Shovel Knight of 90s high-speed FPS games. It plays and looks like how you might remember such games playing and looking, but if you actually go back, you'll realize that they played and looked nothing like this. It's got the feeling down to a science, and then it uses that feeling to bathe you in rain, neon, and blood. The main gimmick of Turbo Overkill is the chainsaw leg. By holding down control while running, you'll cut through anything in your path. It's ridiculous how powerful this attack is. It can clear a room of enemies in seconds, as long as you have the space needed to maneuver. It's precarious on thin walkways. I found myself falling off more than once, and in level 3 when verticality entered the picture, I started to rely more on the weapons available, just to be safe. The sawn-off shotgun is a particular highlight, with its chunky sound effect and resulting carnage. The story is that you're purging people infected by a digital virus overseen by an entity named Syn, S-Y-N, which results in some delightfully creepy imagery. I mean, yeah, I was thinking Shodan every time it showed itself, but its appearances alongside the appearances of your AI buddy and the people you're working for are so sparse, they're a nice break from all the bloodshed, rather than an annoyance that takes away from the action. I found myself wanting to keep playing Turbo Overkill, to see what new weapons and areas would appear, and if alongside the sliding, shifting, and wall run, if any new movement options might unveil themselves. This is a wonderful throwback that uses its nostalgia to show you something new. Watching the trailer for the Cosmic Wheel Sisterhood, I was struck by the gorgeous pixel art visuals. Then I found out this is the same dev team that made the Red Strings Club, and it all made sense. When I finished my 30 minutes with Cosmic Wheel, I said to myself, this might be the best game I've played all year. And what shocked me was that didn't feel like a hyperbole statement to make. I've always been drawn to tarot. I have my own deck, but I'll use it for maybe a couple days in a row before it sits untouched on a shelf in my closet for years. I mention this because tarot is the power of our main character. We play Fortuna, a witch who is 200 years into a millennium-long exile on an asteroid floating through space. Her coven didn't take kindly to her powers of precognition and punished her for it. To stave off her boredom, she summons a powerful being named Abramar. They make a contract to return her power, and we start making a new tarot deck. I got to deck 3 of deck creation, unlocking 3 of the 4 elements that are used to make the cards. I took some time to personalize my deck, performed 2 readings on Abramar, and basically just enjoyed the art, the writing, and the music. The premise, alongside not only designing one's own cards, but dictating the direction the tarot readings take, makes me curious how the game will expand on these systems once the deck is made and we're unleashed back into the world. Sometimes the right game just hits you in the right way at the right time, and I'm excited to continue playing the Cosmic Wheel Sisterhood to see what happens next. I always appreciated Jet Set Radio's aesthetic, its art, its music and vibe, but could never get into the gameplay. I think Bomb Rush Cyberfunk solves that problem. The tutorial section felt a bit lengthy. I mean, there's technically 2 tutorial sections, but once I got into the game proper, I appreciated the slow wind-up. Even that first level is very step-by-step. Movement is breezy, tricks are easy to pull off as well as visually impressive, and the graffiti has a lot of oomph to it, both in the action and the resulting art piece. I always looked forward to tagging a new wall. I guess in 2023, this sort of cell shading is not as visually impressive as it once was, but I think it still works in Cyberfunk's favor. The cutscenes drag a little compared to the speed of the gameplay, but man, that music is a real motivator. The tracks change quickly and they all inspire momentum. Even the motivation of your main character is inspired. I won't ruin the surprise, but something happens as they're breaking out of the New Amsterdam police station that adds some personal stakes, alongside the fun of the Bomb Rush crew being the best tag gang in the city. I do wonder if the game wears out its welcome over time, but I could see a lot of fun being had just skating around in this world, collecting secrets, grinding on rails, and listening to some funky tunes. I've put some time into both Saints Row 3 and 4, and while I enjoyed their comedic anarchy, I never felt the need to push 3 to the end. I might with this Saints Row reboot. Now yes, it's a little janky. The subtitles weren't matching the voice lines, some of the enemies just stood around when I was in front of them, although that could be due to playing on the easiest difficulty. But for the most part, I liked how the game felt to play, and I was amused by the dialogue and delivery.
Then respect this. You set 1 foot on those stairs.
The game started to win me over once the intro ended, moving 6 months previously as part of a newbie squad for a military mercenary group. We made it through basic training and are being thrown into the proverbial meat grinder. There is lots of shooting, some cover, some explosions, and plenty of fun dialogue. The stakes raise when the guy we're there to arrest steals a jet fighter and we hitch a ride! After that exciting sequence, it's time to play dress up, and that was when the 30 minutes ended. There's just so many clothing decisions to make. And here I was, specifically picking a preset on the character build screen so I wouldn't get bogged down with how I looked, allowing more time to actually play the game. So while I have no idea what the game loop actually looks like, based on the combat mechanics, the dialogue, and the way the intro escalated, I look forward to seeing what Saints Row has to offer. I remember hearing that while the first 2 games had their comedic moments, it didn't get downright silly until the 3rd installment. This reboot looks to bring whatever tone the first game had in line with what the series became. I wonder if they were going to try and do the same to Saints Row 2. I guess we'll never know, as Volition was shut down earlier this year by their parent company. Bastards. The Making of Karateka is a documentary game. We follow a timeline of developer Jordan Mechner finding his way into game development, and this story is told through video, images, diary entries, and playable versions of the games talked about. Death Bounce was the first game Mechner tried to sell to Broderbund Software, and through his correspondence made many changes to improve the game before finally abandoning it when they showed little interest. As a viewer and a player, we get to play all these versions. What I liked was in one version, I had a difficult time trying to aim my craft through the small hole to get to the next level. The next item on the timeline was a letter from Broderbund talking about a focus test of the game, and the first complaint was that it was too tricky to get through the hole to the next level. I felt vindicated. I thought the documentary sections were neat. Not only the game industry veterans who appear to talk about the influence of Karateka on them, but I enjoyed the footage of Mechner sitting down with his father and reminiscing about the past. The first entry in the timeline is a video hyping up what makes Karateka so special, and I felt a little like Millhouse, wondering when we were going to get to the fireworks factory as I was making my way through all the materials. I could just go play the game in the game library section, but I wanted to see how the actual documentary progressed. I definitely want to experience it all after that short snippet, and I'd love to see more of these types of games. I guess I need to go check out that Atari 50th anniversary game released last year. I had no idea they were still making Trine games. When I played the first one a couple years back, I found the premise and execution delightful, but the physics and puzzles too fiddly. In Trine 5, playing around with a thief and knight in their intro sections provided no such problem. I like the slow build of puzzles as the mechanics of these characters are introduced, intercut with amusing dialogue and picturesque landscapes. I enjoyed the look of the library, but it wasn't until the night section with its windmills and fields of flowers that I was truly wowed. There's also a lot of easily collected gems there for the taking with a second's worth of ingenuity and exploration. I imagine these get trickier to collect when the game gets going, at which point I'll be swapping between the characters, or playing alongside them if I wanted to engage in co-op, which it looks like Trine 5 is mainly built around. It's a shame they left the wizard's intro for last. If I recall, it was his spells that were the most fiddly. At least the Thief's Rope is more straightforward this time. I could easily see myself playing more of this. I've given so many visual novels a try over the years, and I've bounced off of all of them. They've never impressed me with the visuals or with their writing, so we're 0 for 2 as far as the name of the genre is concerned. Games that marry VN elements with other gameplay, like Ace Attorney or the Zero Escape series, are another matter. But yeah, I was resigned to never being able to understand the love for visual novels themselves. So color me surprised when I found myself not only intrigued by the first 30 minutes of Anonymous Code, but I think I'm interested in checking out the rest of the science adventure series that it's a part of. Now, how did this happen? The presentation has a lot to do with it. Slick user interface, nice music, and surprisingly enjoyable voice acting, being that I was listening to the English cast. The game starts off with a military operation trapping this young man protecting a girl. He predicts the future, and we get thrown back to learn who this guy is and, record scratch, just how he got himself into this situation in the first place. He's part of a hacker duo, taking jobs for cash, and is a bit of an idealist. I played through the section where they complete their job in an AR cafe, where all the patrons are actually schlubby men when the AR filter is turned off. I wasn't given much to go on, but I like the character so far, and want to know how he's able to predict the future and why the military was after the girl in the first place. Now, I did say I played through the AR section, when really I did nothing of the sort. There was no gameplay to speak of. In fact, for most of my time with the game, I had it on auto mode, so the text and voice lines would continue automatically. I eventually turned it off because I couldn't find a good compromise between the speed of the text and the speed of the vocal delivery. As I said, I liked the voice work, but I didn't want to turn the voices off and read at my own pace, which I find myself doing in a lot of games these days. But eventually I found a compromise, and turning auto off was part of it. I think I'm just excited to finally have a possible in to this genre. It might not last, but Anonymous Code seems like the right game at the right time. Heck, I already picked up Steins Gate Elite on the Switch. It was on sale, and I loved the anime when I watched it back in 2013. So we'll see if I become a fan after putting some more time into both of these visual novels. Runner 2: Future Legend of Rhythm Alien is one of my favorite games. I thought Runner 3 was an overload of ideas, and while I got into the series with the first Bit.Trip Rerunner back on WiiWare, I found it so difficult and unforgiving that I never got through it. When starting to play Rerunner, which is a remake of the first game, I was bored. The look of the game, the mechanics, I've done it all before. I didn't feel the spark that was there in Runner 2, but I kept playing, and soon enough that boredom wore off. Unlike Runner 3, these levels are short enough to not overstay their welcome as they introduce each new mechanic, and then through combining said mechanics, I had no choice but to pay attention. I loved the first boss, and by the time I got a couple levels into World 2, I was having a blast. Part of the reason was making sure I collected each piece of gold in each stage, forcing me to play the level optimally, but really to ensure a novel soundscape through my finger gymnastics. However, the added mechanics can be too much. By the time the game introduced the blast, I was thinking, really? Because it can be easy to forget which move is connected to which obstacle as combinations of them are flying at you. I'd say it's less the need for reflexes and more the need for memorization. Another reason I'm loving this remake is the generous checkpointing. What made the original game so difficult is that if you messed up, you were sent back to the start of the level. Even on the boss! Most of my mistakes are self-inflicted, ending a run to go back and pick up a piece of gold I missed. But even when I misread what the game wanted from me, it was okay, because I was never sent back too far. It's this change alone that makes Rerunner the superior version, and I look forward to finally getting through the original game because of it. Oh yes, and there's also a runner maker mode to create and share levels. I wonder if it'll be popular enough to add to the longevity of this pretty good remake. Nowadays, the influence of the Souls games is so obvious, its implementation can be tiring. The intro section, with a simple path of simple enemies to a boss that will likely kill you the first time you attempt it, opening up to a larger area with branching pathways after you're first able to level up. I have a respect for FromSoft games, even if I don't particularly like playing them, but every Souls-like I've tried from another studio has always seemed so beholden to the formula of its inspiration and thus, ironically, devoid of its own soul. I was starting to feel that from Lies of P, but then it surprised me. I will admit that not having played Bloodborne, which is its main inspiration, Lies of P might also be banal and derivative, but to me it felt fresh. And that freshness is in how the game introduces its mechanics, and what those mechanics are. I noticed that I could repair my weapon's durability with my character's metal arm, the arm having its own durability. Then, after the first boss tore me a new one, I used a shortcut to jump back into the fight, and new mechanics made themselves known. Special offensive and defensive moves available when the player has enough charge. Deal enough damage and you can trigger a stagger state, and then if you successfully stagger an enemy, you can perform a special attack for massive damage. Very similar to the critical hit one gets from sneaking up behind an unsuspecting foe. It added a new sense of excitement to the fights which were sadly already exciting enough. I say sadly because even against the lowliest enemy fodder, I can't stop my body from tensing up with every strike and dodge. So after the first boss in the new open area, when I had to contend with multiple foes of different types at once, it was exhilarating. As is exploring every nook and cranny, following the glowing Allura blue that leads to specially placed items. What made me interested in Lies of P while watching the trailer was the idea of using Pinocchio as the backdrop for a Souls game. The atmosphere is grim, and the idea of killing puppets is novel, but the setting itself wasn't the draw while playing the game. It was the gameplay itself. On top of that, it's only recently I've learned about the DLSS option in the graphic settings, so I turned that on before playing and was overjoyed with how smooth the game ran. I don't know if I could push through this or not, seeing how frustrated I get with these types of games, but Lies of P is definitely the best Souls-like I've played in years. Take that for what it's worth. Cocoon enthralled me. Creating a puzzle game with no on-screen prompting is tough, as it can be easy for a player to become confused. But with Cocoon, That only happened once, and it was on an actual puzzle. So I think it was my fault rather than the game. If you've watched my streams of puzzle games, you'll know that I tend to overthink the problem when a simple solution is right in front of me, and that's what happened here. What plastered the hugest smile on my face was how alien everything was, and how each new discovery was a surprise. Aside from movement, there is an interact button, and all the technology and the way this world works was completely, well, alien to anything I could have expected. I was thinking of another world while playing, but I also thought about games like Myst or Abduction with their strange locations and contraptions. Cocoon feels like a streamlined version of those games, as it's more about moving forward than contemplation. Aside from the time I got stuck, I was never perplexed for more than a minute or two before I moved on to the next discovery. Heck, even the boss that appeared was more puzzle than combat. Every new obstacle was a joy, and I look forward to playing through the entirety of Cocoon as soon as possible. I don't think I've ever finished a level in a puzzle game and then spent minutes just watching in awe. The cozy sun-bathed voxels of Station to Station are what grabbed my attention when I watched the trailer, alongside the idea of connecting stations to stations, and washing the landscape in color. It reminds me of Flower, but I love any game where my actions revitalize the land. It's such a stark contrast too. I spend minutes enjoying the trains, chugging through hills and valleys, admiring the cottages and flowers, before entering a new level devoid of the joy I just experienced. The lack of the building soundtrack that accompanies linking together all the stations is deafening, but things start up again once the first stations are linked. Now the player only has so much money to build tracks, and linking together a chain of stations on their way to a city, while making sure to not spend too much on expensive bridges by twisting through the landscape, is the beginnings of what will likely make the game devious in its later levels, and of course each level has bonus objectives for extra challenge. The only downside was my graphics card not liking the game, encountering intense frame drops when new buildings appeared on the map or a successful chain of stations was connected together. Just those sections, nowhere else. This issue, combined with how cozy and enjoyable the game is, makes me yearn for a Switch port in the future. Or maybe I'll eventually get a Steam Deck. I think a handheld experience would add to the cozy factor. One of the positive things I had to say about Alan Wake is that it created a great sense of being in nature. I grew up in the Pacific Northwest, and trudging through lush forests accompanied by a rainy, overcast sky brought back pleasant memories. Seeing it's 13 years after the first game came out, the tech to render this atmosphere is much improved. More than anything, I think it's the lighting technology. I can't imagine what the areas I walk through would look like if I had the machine to handle ray tracing. That's a double lament because my laptop's faults were too exposed to enjoy a smooth experience playing the game. In previous videos on my channel, I have talked about how with certain games, there will be times when the frame rate will drop through the floor for about 5 seconds before returning to normal. I've never been able to fix it or find a reason for its occurrence. Usually, I just pause the game when it happens and continue onwards, but in Alan Wake 2, it happened with such frequency, even in innocuous moments such as placing clues on the caseboard, that I don't think I'll be able to enjoy this game until I upgrade or join the current console generation. And it's a shame. Despite my dislike of Alan Wake 1, the pacing, the cinematography, the writing, and the voice acting of this sequel all pulled me in. We play a murder victim before we start in earnest as a young FBI agent arriving on the scene with her older partner to try and solve the case. The victim went missing 13 years ago, and this murder links back to 2010 as well. I'm intrigued, but a bit weary because I wasn't able to get to any of the combat, which is the part of the first game I absolutely despised. I have hope though, not only by playing on a lower difficulty setting, but if control is any indication, there should be accessibility options to help a struggling player through. I really wish I could continue with this. Back when Grow Home released in 2015, I thought how cool it was that someone worked out a novel approach to rock climbing, utilizing the controller's triggers as the two alternating hands reaching out to latch onto an ever higher surface. Of course, in that game, you play a robot that can attach itself to any surface. In Jusant, you are human, and if there is no handhold present, you need to find another route. Because of this limitation, that your character is always attaching a rope to a carabiner, and you can attach up to 3 carabiners yourself, climbing feels a lot more dangerous and thus exhilarating. There is clever use of a stamina bar too. You can rest at any time to give your hands a break from gripping, refilling your stamina, but each rest lowers the size of the stamina bar itself. You cannot stay on this wall indefinitely, and jumping towards a handhold just out of reach takes up stamina, as does running alongside a wall to reach a new handhold. I bet there's plenty of additional mechanics as one plays through the game, but at least in this early stage, I got a strong sense of each successive climb raising the stakes. As for the climb itself, it's lonely. There's evidence of people living on this rock pillar that stretches up to the heavens, but the only thing here now are ruins, remnants, and the occasional note. It's nice window dressing that likely holds an interesting tale, but as it's dressing, it doesn't conflict with the loneliness of the climb and the focus needed to keep climbing. I'm not smitten by Jusant, but it's made a positive enough impression for me to want to see what comes next. I think I know what kind of game the Talos Principle II is going to be. But I don't actually know what kind of game the Talos Principle II is going to be. It starts in a glitchy garden, guided by the voice of Elohim. It's the tutorial section, and to anyone who's played the Talos Principle, it should be familiar. Solve the puzzles, get the sigils, unlock the doors. It's more streamlined, and of course it looks a lot nicer, one would hope, but then you walk through the light, and what the sequel is makes itself known. The character at the end of the last game gained consciousness, and then set about making more like her. She founded the city of New Jerusalem and set a goal to make 1,000 new humans to populate it. We play number 1,000. Our birth is a special event, and after gaining some perspective on what's happened, we emerge to a crowd of robots before the mayor gives a speech. At this point, I said to myself, of course something is going to go wrong, and yes, dear viewer, it did. It looks like there's a test for the citizens of New Jerusalem. Who will heed the call to adventure? A lot of the robots are stuck in their ways, and the enchanting tram ride into the city shows off two of the competing ideologies. Unfortunately, I either need to upgrade my laptop or stop buying graphically advanced games the week they release, because not only did it take minutes for the game to load initially, but new sections were choppy as f***. The section of the tram ride where the music kicks in hung for what felt like a good few seconds. But consider me intrigued. I loved the Talos Principle. I streamed it in 2023 and it was still as delightful and at times fiendishly frustrating as I remember it. The sequel already feels like it has expanded scope. Will it be a straight puzzle game? Will the dialogue systems influence the direction of the narrative? And will it be intercut with more narrative moments? The first game balanced its puzzles alongside its philosophy well, and I look forward to seeing if this sequel does the same. Wow, 2 Yakuza games released this year. While Ishin was a remaster of an older title that never made it out of Japan, Like a Dragon Gaiden, the man who erased his name, yeesh, what a mouthful, is a new entry in the series starring Kazuma Kiryu. It's a side story taking place between Yakuza 6 and Yakuza Like a Dragon. Kiryu makes a deal with a politician, having them forge a death certificate so he no longer officially exists. Afterwards, he's contracted to do jobs, and the game starts with us escorting the granddaughter of the faction boss home when some tough guys appear and try to take advantage of her. The combat that ensues is as flashy and smooth as ever. The gimmick is Kiryu has access to a rope that he can use as part of his combos to grab foes and fling them away, as well as pull surrounding weapons to him. I had a lot of fun in that first combat encounter and wanted to fight more, but what followed was sadly just boring exposition, as Kiryu is reminded of the situation he's in while the inciting incident of the story gets set up. We are helping to guard a smuggled shipment of gold bullion as it leaves Japan, at the behest of the CIA. Obviously, something is going to go wrong, and we'll find ourselves embroiled in whatever transpires. But I gotta say, unlike the tight, dramatic intrigue of many of the other Yakuza titles I've played, I didn't find myself caring as much about Gaiden. I just wanted an excuse to engage with the combat again. Maybe the story picks up once this smuggling operation goes down. I know I shouldn't be impressed by gorgeous pixel art and animation in 2023, but it keeps happening. There are moments of Sonobe that had me marveling at the artistry of the people who made this. Not just in the visuals either, because during the tutorial section, which is what we'll talk about in the next paragraph, I was impressed with the snappiness and fluidity of the running and jumping. Once the grapple hand is introduced, things get less precise due to not having full control over where the arm fires. And of course, the arc of a swing is always going to be more floaty than platforming basics, but it was something to get used to rather than detracting from the good time I was having so far. Then later on, I realized that combat revolves around movement and the grapple hand. Amazing. I think that'll take some more time to get used to, but it's time I'm willing to give. Now the tutorial is great because of its storytelling. You're playing with your daughter on your day off. She wants to play soldiers and assigns you a mission to retrieve Agent Raspberry, who's being held captive in a bush on top of a nearby cliff. She then tells you that the pits are filled with lava, and to indulge the fantasy, your character engages his visual overlays. It's cute and a great introduction. Here's the only problem. The instant I saw the character with a giant grapple arm playing with their cute kid, I knew something bad was going to happen. And I was right. Our character is on a path of vengeance, looking for the mysterious Sonobe who is responsible for putting us in this state. An old army colleague has a lead after a neat boss fight, and the main game begins. This is where I stopped playing. While I think using a loved one to spur our main character on a path of revenge is a tired trope by this point, I want to see more of how the movement and combat is used in the game's level design, and to witness more of the pixel art. Sonobe definitely left an impression. I like cooperative gaming experiences. It's just so difficult to design one that works with strangers online. Karmazoo is a good step in the right direction. There's platforming challenges, there's fruit to collect, and a bunch of players that have to make it through together. The reason is the bubble system. If your bubble intersects with another player's bubble, you're safe. I think if you're sharing a halo, you can die indefinitely and keep coming back, but if you're on your own, one is all you get. This is important to understand, as dying on a spike will turn your corpse into a platform that can help everyone else make it over the gaps. This is why seeing the bubble start to fray induces panic, so I tried to make sure we were all bubbled up as we made our way through the 5 acts of the round I played, collecting all the fruit along the way. Until we didn't. At the end of each level, the group votes on a bonus modifier card, and the more fruit collected means more cards to choose from. We were collecting all the fruit until we chose a card that granted bonus karma hearts for what's on the timer at the end of the level. Then it was a mad dash to the exit. The gimmick of Karmazoo is the karma hearts acquired by helping each other, and these hearts are what are used to unlock new things in the zoo. There is a menagerie of animals to unlock, each with its own small gameplay benefit. As this was my first game, I was simply a blob, but I took my winnings and unlocked the entirety of the first row, as well as the ability to dance and emote, which is very important. It looks like there's a sense of progression and missions to complete, as well as a wing of the library I did not explore and some coming soon statues to boot. Basically, I think a player could be unlocking for quite a while. I love this concept. In my game, there was a player who was a giant spring. They knew what they were doing. They were our de facto leader, shepherding us through the trials. And that sense of looking out for each other was what made me want to keep everyone together and help out wherever I could. I think Karmazoo is a tad too simplistic for me to want to continue with it, but I love the concept, and experiencing each animal's dance and song is almost enough to make me want to continue all on its own. And that's it for the games of 2023. Let's talk about some takeaways from the project. Firstly, I opened up more with my thoughts the further into the year I got. The games that are a single paragraph, those were generally written earlier in the year. Some games deserve more time than others, depending on what happens during those first 30 minutes. But if I do another one of these for 2024, I think each game will have more coverage. Secondly, is that any AAA game from this year, with the exception of Returnal, I was complaining about the frame drops I would get at regular intervals. Maybe Returnal is just optimized better? I have to wonder, because as I'm writing this, I'm a few hours into Death Stranding. That game looks amazing, and I've had no tanking frame rate at all. It's certainly a head scratcher. I guess the question is, did you all get tired of me bringing up my laptop's limitations every time I covered a AAA game? And if I do this again, should I just ignore technical problems? Thirdly, it's pretty obvious which games I liked, which games I didn't gel with but could recommend to others, and which were not for me at all. Sure, filtering out the games that I didn't want to play 30 minutes of does a lot of heavy lifting towards only playing things I think I'd like. But you never know if a game is going to vibe with you or not. That's part of the pleasant surprise of playing new things. I never would have guessed my top 5 of the year as I was playing each title. Oh, you want to know what my top 5 games of the year are? Especially because I didn't make a best of 2023 video this year? Well, aside from working on this behemoth, the reason I didn't make that video is I recorded my top 5 of the year with DorkX and Drew Doodle over on our podcast Post Game Clarity. It's on all the podcast platforms, and there's a video version here on YouTube. I highly recommend it. It's a great listen and a fun time. But for those of you who just want the info, here it is without fanfare. At number 5, Wooloop. At number 4, Turbo Overkill. Number 3, Station to Station. Number 2, The Cosmic Wheel Sisterhood. And number 1 is Cocoon. I've already streamed Cocoon, played through Station to Station, and have been slowly going through Wooloop as I listen to music in the evenings. So far, the placement holds. Finally, I'd love to know what you all thought of this project. Do you think I should do it again in 2024? If so, would you like to see changes in the format? I'm open to suggestion, but I'll need good reasoning to shake things up. Perhaps I should place the games in the order I covered them? Perhaps I should only cover games from 2024? Perhaps I should play larger games for an hour instead of 30 minutes? Let me know in the comments. Now, if you'd like to support a 2024 video, why not become a member of my Patreon? For as little as $1 a month, you can get access to monthly updates and polls for which games I stream and critique next. $3 gets you early access to the videos, and if you really like what I do, there's a $9 tier where I will thank you out loud in this space. Like this! Thank you, Daniel Hobson. Oh, and I also have a coffee page if you'd like to send a cup of coffee my way. I like coffee. The next video on my channel will be my critique of Disco Elysium. I hope you enjoy that. Let me know what you thought of this project down in the comments. Give it a like, subscribe to the channel, share the video with your friends, and until next time, I hope you're all well, enjoying your gaming, and are having a wonderful